Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EQ Advantage interview series. I'm Alan Samuel Cohen, and I'm excited to have you here today. We're joined by my pal, Coach Eric Yusko, who is going to be talking with us today about the exceptional man. And before I introduce Eric, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and what is the EQ Advantage. The EQ Advantage is a suite of programs. EQ stands for emotional quotient, also known as emotional intelligence. And the EQ Advantage has a Facebook group for men, coaches, leaders, and solopreneurs called the EQ Advantage. Come, fellows, hang out with us there. Ladies, we've got other programs for you as well, and I hope that there are men and women joining us today. The EQ Advantage is also a group coaching program for men who are looking to accomplish big goals in the shortest amount of time possible. And we also offer emotional intelligence training. My name again is Alan Samuel Cohen, and I'm an executive and leadership coach, team consultant, and an expert in emotional intelligence, which is the foundation for all of the work that we do to help professionals be successful in all aspects of their life. Before we get started, I want to invite all of you just in the chat to put down where you're from. We'd love to say hi, and I'll try to check the chat periodically. You want to post your questions there, and we want to get back to you. And if you are joining us later on, please put hashtag replay because we want to know who is here. The EQ Advantage interview series, and this is our first week. We've done 5 interviews this week, and this is our 5th. Are all really focused on real men. And we're going to put real in quotes because that's going to be my first question of my pal Eric here. Real men having real conversations, authentic conversations about subjects that we think are important to explore. So, hello, Eric. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Let me introduce you properly, and then I'm going to ask you to shed some color on your journey from where you were to where you are. Eric is the founder of Man of Class and the Man of Class podcast, and he's an exceptional life strategist for men who know there's a lot more to life than just the everyday grind. After spending 10 years in the aerospace industry, connecting people all over the globe, he realized there was a major gap in our society where men were still living like their fathers or their grandfathers before them in a world that just wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior. He believes that there's a better way for men to not only live a life of the daily grind, but that is a life that's worthy of being defined as exceptional. And in doing so, he believes it will set examples for men to become the next generation of great men. Eric's also a new dad, so I'm going to ask him a couple of questions about what that experience is like. So, Eric, before we go into the topic, tell us a little bit more about your journey, how you got to coaching, where you live, hobbies, interests, just stuff that makes you a cool dude.
Yeah, absolutely. So live here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and my journey, it's funny. I've always had a deep connection with people, always wanting to help them throughout various, whether it was in high school, whether it was in college. And a lot of people had always said, oh, you'd be a great life coach. Now that was before we knew like what the heck a life coach actually was. And I just kept being me. I just showed up and was the help people wherever I could. There wasn't really, I didn't like associate any type of name with it. And it wasn't until actually sitting on the couch with my wife, I got off a phone call with a buddy, and he was going through a traumatic experience, and I was helping him through, figuring out what is it that he wanted to do, time to sever a relationship, where to move next, and a lot of deep type conversations. So I get off the phone and I turn to my wife, Amber, and she says, you should do this more. Like you're so good at it, at helping people, of seeing the things that they can't see for themselves and to get out of their own way. You should be a coach. There's one thing I've learned: when my wife tells me something, do it. Okay. There's been times where I fought it and was like, yeah, definitely, I'll do that later. And then I always end up doing it. And the biggest regret I always have is that I should have just listened at the beginning. So when she told me this, I go, okay, hey, I get it. I need to go start doing this. And then the more I got into it, the more I realized what I could actually go and do. I could actually do this and help people throughout their journeys and building out what that was. And then when I got into Man of Class, I sat there and went, I was always inspired as a child, sitting in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, learning of these quote Renaissance men that just, they live these baller lives. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like you read some of these bios of like what they had done, and they're like, oh, you know, he was an inventor, he was a painter, he was an investor. You know, he was in the local government. He did all this stuff, and you're like, my God, like these guys are really powerful, right? Like they live such full and rich lives. And I go, wow, like, what is it? Why couldn't I do that? And why can't other guys do that? And it's not just guys, but why can't other girls do that? And so then the more I was going through that journey, I realized there's this massive movement. I'm so happy there's this movement of empowered women empowering women. And then I'm like, that's fantastic. Men, where are we? We're not. We're not, right? We're not empowered. We're not empowering. We're just kind of, you know, a couple steps back. And so then it was like, that's that need. That's that big need in society, because society only moves when everyone comes along for the ride. It's not just the couple elite that pulls everybody. It's really, you know, a rallying of everybody, of lifting each other up to move to the next phase. So that's really how I started into this Man of Class, and really helping men specifically around that exceptional life. Because when I can talk about my life and guys are like, wow, you're so lit up, like all the time, you got all this energy. You're just like, you're just crushing it. How, you know, like, how can you be so happy? Like, does the universe just not deal you bad hands? And I'm like, okay, first, that's not the case, but it's what you do with it, and it's how you work through it. And so when I can tell that story, a lot of times guys are like, that's what I see that I want. I just don't know how to get there. And so that's exactly what I do, is I help get them to define what that is and go on that journey.
That's awesome. And I'm going to ask you to share a little bit about some of the guys that you've helped and how you've accompanied them along their journey from not exceptional to exceptional to living really fantastic lives. So and where do you live, Eric?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
In Cincinnati, Ohio. And what do you do for fun?
I'm a car guy. I love the one thing that I always always turns my head is a fancy car that goes down the road. And so that's actually what got me into engineering as well, because I just love to tinker. I love to figure out how stuff worked. And in some ways I'm realizing that's also how I got so well into coaching, because I'm so infatuated with understanding how something works, whether it's a person, whether it's a car, a motorcycle, whatever it is, that like I absorb myself so much in it. And then I look at like, how can I make this better? How can I leave it better? And one of the things that I always heard growing up was, how do I leave a situation better than what I found it?
Love it.
And so I've always take that as a mantra for me to go through. But I tinker with house projects, rebuilt a 71 Mustang from with my dad, started at age 15, rebuilt it from the ground up. And
fantastic.
I'm a tinker.
So I look forward to having you come visit us in New York, because I got a long list of things that need to be fixed.
I'll bring my tool.
To have you over. So I know I asked, and I know you're a fit guy. You run, yes? You're a runner, or among other
I run, I lift. We're starting to think about maybe getting into cycling, because my wife loves to cycle.
Nice.
And having a newborn, or not a newborn, she's not new anymore. She's 14 months old. But we started thinking about how can we, because I can run by myself, but Amber hates to run. So how do we still be physically active, but as a family? And so we're looking at bicycling as another.
Lift your kid.
She loves that rocket ship. I throw her up and down, and she'll do it all day until, you know, daddy's shoulder starts to just, you know, give out. And
it's a good workout. So I already gave you in advance that I was going to ask you this question. I know you've been giving it a lot of thought. So the themes here of these shows are real men, real conversations. So what's your definition of real man? And there's no right or wrong answer with that.
So it's interesting. I'll tell you why I hate that question. The concept around a real man, we've always set that out. And a lot of times when we ask questions, not most of the time, always 100% of the time when you ask a question, your brain it's like the original askjeeves.com. And
Yeah.
for those that may not get that reference, it's just like Google. If you type in
Right.
Google, how do I go do something? Google will come back with something of like, here's how you go do it.
Right.
Your human brain is the same thing. So every time we ask that question, but what does it take to be a real man? Something will come up, right? And in some ways, because subconscious programming, our insecurities will come out. People will define it as a way of something that they're not.
Fascinating.
Because they'll sit there and go, oh, like let's say hypothetically that it's, a single guy, and they'll be like, oh, a real man is a family man. I'm not a family man, so I'm not a real man, but one day maybe I'll be that man. Or somebody who's skinny that looks at somebody that wants to be athletic, and they go, to be a real man is somebody that's athletic. Or somebody who's, super tough and burly, and be like, well, but they dress better. So a real man is somebody
Right.
who's really well put together, and it's always something external.
So it's always aspirational. All right.
And it's always aspirational. And we always say, but I'm not that man.
Yeah.
I want to be, right? Or the ego will come in and say, well, I'm a real man, but then it's always this confusing thing. And so always take a step back and go, in a lot of ways, women are smarter than men. They think through things. Men will speak immediately. Women will think for a second and then they'll speak. And so there's always a lot of power that can be pulled from that. I know, in previous episodes, you talked about like the masculine energy and the feminine energy.
Right.
And the thing that I love that women have done recently is that whole movement of empowered women empowering women.
Right.
They've never asked the question and said, hey, this is an all women's club. What is it? Before you can before we can empower you, you have to cross this threshold of becoming a woman. They just say, you're a 16-year-old girl who, or woman who is having a baby. We're going to empower you. Here's our love.
Right.
Here's our support.
Right.
You want to be a CEO of the company, of whatever company, we empower you. You want to be a stay-at-home mother, we empower you. There's so much love that regardless of whether they're a stay-at-home, they're super fit, they're, overweight, whatever that it is, whoever and however that makeup, they're just like, here's our love.
Yeah.
And they don't ask that predetermining question of what does it take to be a real woman? They just automatically give it. And I know going back through so many different societies, there were like the walk of the man and all this stuff where it was like a boy becomes a man, but a woman is just born.
Yeah.
And so it's just so fascinating that we're still held by these shackles.
Yeah.
Where it's like a 16-year-old, let's say that, however you want to define as a man, and we could say everyone has their own definition, but let's say that it's a 16-year-old who's working, who has a family already, and I'm trying to think of anything, who is like, the typical Mr. Fix-It or something like that, right? Where they're like, okay, he's a real man, but he's 16. So do you say he's a real man because he's not old enough to drink or not old enough to vote,
Right.
So there's all this weird,
Right.
Which lens do you want to look at it through?
Right.
But if you just say, screw it, you're a man.
Right.
You identify as a man. And then we get into a whole nother realm of transgenders where we say a woman identifies as a man and a man identifies as a woman.
Right.
Forget about all of that. And you just say, I support you. Here's my love. You're
right. So I think
so
you're also talking about when is that moment where you go from boy to man, and is it chronological? Is it emotional? Is it spiritual? Is it physical? How do we determine? So we were talking about what it is to be a real man, but even just like when are you a man? That's a question that we all get to determine for ourselves.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because I know sometimes when there's like a single mother, and they have a boy, oftentimes, I'm saying boy and man interchangeably of just chronologically in that sense, but there's oftentimes where he'll get a job earlier, or he'll take care of his mom more, or he'll be there more emotionally because he saw a need in the household that he needed to fill. And in some ways you could say, well, now he's a lot, he's so wise beyond his years, and we say all these things.
He's the man of the house now.
He's the man of the house, right? But it's funny, even like stuff like that, where it's like, oh, you're the man of the house, but then the second born is like, but I'm a man. And they're like, yeah, but you're not really the man of the house.
The man of the
right?
house. Right.
And so we use this bestowment almost
Right.
like a medal or a crown that
Right.
we pass around that
Where you're like a little
often.
man, right? Like,
Right.
little man.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right. When do I become a big man? You're like,
Right.
right, these are all excellent questions. So,
Yeah.
but I do truly think that it's we have to be cautious of that, because whenever we ask that question, because I've asked myself that question so many times, and what I've started to realize is that I've always put something out, and then no matter how much other people say, but I would definitely call you a man, and you're like, yeah, but am I though? Because maybe I don't have this, or I'm not as stable here, or
Yeah.
and then I started realizing, going, if I'm doing this, everyone else is doing this.
Yeah.
They're always defining something that's some future, versus bringing that to say, I am one, and I'm just going to start empowering others to accept that, and to say,
Yeah.
you are a real man, like go out there and
Because
live your best life.
I've even heard men who are not the primary wage earner in the family talk about feeling like less than a man because they're not providing in that
Right.
more traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there are so many associations with what it means to be a man for people that it can be very reductive, very minimizing if you don't feel like you are
Mm-hmm.
living that definition. Then
Yeah.
you're always missing the mark of being that man, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a sorry kind of existence.
And it's interesting, because if you just only split the world into like professional and at home or personal, women are going through the same thing, but on a completely 180, where women feel pressure, right? They may want to go out and become that breadwinner, but then it's like, you're almost looked down upon, because it's not historical of what the person, what women used to have been. But if they're just more driven, if they're just more business savvy, or they're more whatever, and they have that drive in order for them to live, then that's exactly what they should go do. And consequently, men who usually were go out and get a corporate job and work for 20 or 30 years, and then be able to retire and then give back to your family. Now those guys that maybe have a little bit more EQ, or have more patience, because children take patience.
Yeah.
But if mom doesn't have it, but dad does, or two dads or two moms, there's going to be that playing of strengths of who has the more patience. Okay, maybe that might be a better role for you to be with a child, because you can help instill those
Right.
lessons,
Yeah.
instead of having to be it all.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's always one of those things where you set yourself up for failure, and then your subconscious brain is going to ask, well, why aren't you at all? And you're like, I don't, what? Then your brain, when you ask that question, why am I not having it all? It'll tell you, because it will answer the question that you ask it, versus how can I provide a household that has it all, which is a completely different question.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the rise of the exceptional man. But I am actually curious about how some of what you've discussed applies to your own family life and your relationship, if I get personal, all right, relationship with your wife and your kid, and how you kind of how you determine roles and all of that. And I guess, with COVID and all, and being home 24/7 together, maybe some of those roles and responsibilities have shifted. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's one of those where Amber and I, early on, Amber's my wife, for those that don't know, it's been an interesting journey, and every step of the journey takes a different version of ourselves. And so she went to school for a speech language pathologist, but she also has a passion for teaching yoga. And so same type of thing, engineer corporate world for myself, and then having, coaching, so we both have these side ambitions and are growing these things. And so it's very important for us to support each other professionally as we go back and forth. But when it was just, I don't want to say singles, but like when we were married, but no kids yet, it was, we really got to know one another, and we said, what is it that people who have lasted 50 years in marriage, what are the things, and not lasted 50 years where they're like, please take one of us at this point, right? It's so
Right.
much trouble to go through the divorce,
Right.
but like are truly happy and still have that
Right.
spark and energy. Like, what is it about them? And it was really around communication.
Yeah.
And it was really around supporting of one another and hearing, not just, you know, she talks to me and I talk to her, but neither one of us are listening. But like, how is it that we can really be there?
Yeah.
And almost, I use it as a servant-based spouse. You know, there's a big trend right now in the corporate world where it's like a servant-based leader, and it's the big breaking down the fallacy of like leaders are providing jobs for others. It's really, how is it as a leader, how are you enabling the people to go do the best work? The
Right.
same thing that we take in our household, where I ask Amber, like, how can I best support you in this? And then when Lily came, she actually had a difficult delivery, and she ended up having to have an emergency C-section. But in that time, that 6 weeks when she was home, I knew, I was like, it's not my place to ever ask for her to do anything that she doesn't feel comfortable. So I took on the roles and responsibilities of everything, of waking up and getting, Lily and bringing her over so she can be breastfed, and doing the extra cleaning and the extra this and the extra that in order to allow my wife to heal. Because, you imagine getting sawn in half, that's not a delight, and
Right.
all your innards pulled out and put back in.
Right.
That was a big traumatic experience for her. And so I said, it's time for me to over deliver and to do exactly anything that I need happen. And because she works in the university setting, I know there's times, the first week of the semester, the last week of the semester, those are very troubling times for her.
Yeah.
And I over deliver, and I'll make dinner, and I'll clean
I
the
love
house,
that.
and I'll do this.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
because I know,
it's servant partnership without the subservient,
right,
the interpretation of what it means to be a servant. All right.
right.
It's just, it's setting that other person up to be able
successful.
to be healthy and successful in whatever they're pursuing.
And I said a lot of like me giving for her, she does the same exact thing back.
Yeah.
It's a complimentary, where there's times where, I'm on the road for business, or I'm having, interviews like all night or something, and she'll take care of Lily, everything.
Right.
And it's how best can we support each other, instead of the ego of I'm me, you're you.
Right.
It's how do we rise as a whole household,
Right.
and come together for the decisions for Lily.
And plus we know she has really good advice for you, and you need to continue to take it.
Yeah. And so that's actually a brilliant point. It's the servant base of like, how can I help support you? But it's also the humbleness, because I eat at least one piece of humble pie a day.
Nice.
It doesn't keep the doctor away, but it's a good daily diet. But it's also, what are the things, like I'm really good with, around, the budgeting piece of it. Finance and numbers just comes really natural to me. And she's really good around what are the best organizational systems. Like the way she can pack a vehicle, she could take, that old saying of like 50 pounds of crap in a 40-pound bag or whatever else it doesn't fit. She'll make it fit. Somehow she does. She has like the beautiful knack for that. She sees things like the Matrix and putting it all together. And it's just relying on like, okay, this is your strong suit. Like you plan this, or like, you deal with this and then I'll deal with this, and we just tag team. So.
That's great. That's a great partnership. It's a great partner. Now, my advice for you kids, all right?
Yep.
So 30 years together with my spouse is one day at a time. And suddenly, so it's one day at a time. So you have a vision for what the what the partnership is, and what and what you want to, how you want to be in the world together, one day at a time. And suddenly you wake up, and those one days, all those one days added up to 30
into years,
40 years, 50 years. But it's like every day you have together, you have a chance to make it better, or to just status quo. And and it keeps it fresh, right? If you approach every day as new. Some days you just forget that altogether, and you just go back to your old bad selves. But that's part of the process too.
And COVID has definitely given us that piece, right? Where we've forgotten a lot of the daily, or, people who have like weekly dates. Right. Not going to go anywhere. I guess we're staying in.
Well, it's how do you vary your days? And so every day doesn't feel like Saturday or Monday, whatever the day is that you don't want to
Right.
have over and over and over again. So, all right, so let's talk about exceptional. So we talked about what it is to be a man, what that means or doesn't mean. What does it mean? You were talking about the rise of the exceptional man, and that's
Hmm.
also what you are calling some of your programs
Hmm.
concept. So tell us more about that. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, the rise of the exceptional man is really that journey. You know, everyone loves the hero journey, right? The hero journey is in the movies that we watch, the stories that we read, the great stories that we listen to, whether it's at the bar with our friends pre-COVID or just on Zoom calls post-COVID, you know, whatever that may be. But we love that journey. But rarely we ever look inward and say, what is my hero journey? And so again, one of the things that I realized is I always try to look ahead at future trends. And so when I had spent a lot of time with elderly just throughout high school and different volunteering activities. And one of the same things kept bringing up, which was, you know, these folks that are in their 70s, 80s, and sometimes 90s, they hold on to like a couple, two or three stories that they really at that point have defined their life, but they only have two or three that they latch onto of like, this is what I remember. But then it'll be like, you know, I wish I would have done this when I was there. I wish I would have done this when I was here. And there's a lot of regret. And there's a lot of, you know, if I could only do, you know, if I could only give you my wisdom at your age, right? We see that a lot. And but what does that really mean? That means that at the end of the life, you sit there and say, there's a gap between what your potential was and who you turned out to be.
Yeah.
And in my mind, when I think of an exceptional man or living an exceptional life, it doesn't have to be just an exceptional man, but exceptional woman or man is when you die, if you were to, you know, whatever you believe, whether spiritual, God, no God, however you want to, you know, just imagine you're in a room and the person that walks in that door is your potential. You want it to be where it's just a mirror. You sit
Love
there
it.
and go, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
You did it. You did literally everything that you had, all
Right.
your potential that you had inside of you. You did it. So
Right.
congratulations, high five, and you know, slap each other on the butts and get on out of here. Right? That was it. The
Right.
worst case scenario is that you're sitting in this dark room, fearful, knowing that your potential is going to walk in, uncertain of what that is.
Right.
That door creaks open, and it's a rock star coming in, and you're sitting there going, "There's no way. There's no."
Right.
And then they go through and they unpack their story and they're like, oh, remember, you know, in 20, you know, when I was 20 I did this, when I was 30 I did this, and you know, people told me I couldn't do this and I did it anyway, and I made millions of dollars and I married my best friend, and my life was just so amazing. You don't want to be that person that sits there and goes, oh my god, all I had to do is pick up a pen
Yeah.
on the table, but I couldn't even do that, right?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
great. It's great. It's a great
to me,
image.
that's really what that definition of that exceptional life really means, is to live your full potential.
Well, and I know for a lot of us, you know, maybe you're thinking about it in your 30s. I don't know how many people think about it in their 30s, but certainly in your 40s, 50s. I'm almost 60. When you think a lot about legacy and
Hmm.
what you want to leave behind. I love the person who says, "Well, I don't care what I leave behind because it's going to be dead." You know, it's like, what do I? But I care, right?
Hmm.
So it's really looking at what you want to accomplish, who you want to be in the world, how you want to show up,
Yeah.
what's the mark that you want to leave, and I think the sooner we can start thinking about that, and then manifest that in all sorts of exceptional ways,
Hmm.
I think we'll be happier and more fulfilled. And I love that idea of seeing potential in the mirror. Um, when you get to the pearly gates or wherever, and it's like it's you.
Yeah. Right.
That's a beautiful. And why wait, right?
And
Why
then you
wait
just
to start?
reminisce on all the great times that you had because you have lived, you know, to your max potential. Yeah.
And now you're going to get me singing some Sinatra, right?
I
Because you know
I drinkled that seed down there for you so that way you could
I did
just
it
I
my
did it
way,
my
right?
way.
No
Yeah.
regrets, no
Hmm.
regrets. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do with men and some of the programs that you're launching, just all that good stuff. How folks are working with you.
Yeah. So I've traditionally had done one-on-one just because that one of the big things for me is relationships. And for me, I want to make sure that I over deliver. That's one of the common themes is, as you get to know me, is just that over deliver of how much value can I bring and how can I get you truly to make that transformation in your life. And one of the things that I started realizing, men are always stubborn, right? We say, oh, we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And if that was always the case, then we wouldn't be talking here, right? Because everybody in their 90s would have been like, I'm living a baller status. I have the best life, and there wouldn't ever be that seed of doubt of like, oh, what if, right? We would just all be ballers at that point.
Right.
But that's not the case. So that's just, how long are you accepting that lie until you say, my life is enriched by others? And so traditionally I work one-on-one with folks where I get in and it's that crystal clear. What is it, what does it mean for you? If a genie came out of the bottle and it gave you exactly your dream life, what would that look like? And it's really almost painting that picture and saying, okay, now that we've got that, let's go and start to do that. And again, most people can say, oh, I can go figure that out. You will run into trouble. I guarantee if there's one thing I've learned over 30 years on the planet is that you will run into troubles, and you will run into the darkest troubles that will prevent you from making that headway. Yeah. So you need a Jiminy Cricket. You need someone there to bounce the ideas off of and to help you through so that you can truly get to that next level. Yeah. So I've been doing one-on-one work with a lot of clients and having a lot of success. And then I started realizing that may be great for somebody who is so far from, they see this idealized vision that's so far away and they're like, I need a ton of help. Yeah. But there's a lot of guys that are maybe, there's some small things that it's not a massive difference, but it's a smaller difference. And so then I said, well, how can I deliver value for them as well? And so I'm starting a beta program that's going to be the Exceptional Life program. And what it's going to be brought up of is basically, again, defining what that is, but then secretly bringing in all the right resources and the tools and the tips and the tricks and the strategies and all that stuff to make sure at the end of the day, my promise and guarantee to you is that you have everything you need. Not only just here's the tools, go figure it out. It's you have that, you have a blueprint, and we've also been following it so that we guarantee that you get to that point.
Fantastic. I'm going to pause here for 1 second, Eric. So for fellows who are listening right now, if you want to hear more about Eric's program, say hello in the comments, and Eric will follow up with you, I'm sure, to let you know more details about the program. And I think you said you're also starting or have started a Facebook group. Yes?
Yeah. I just started. So it's not cleaned up yet, but I did start a Facebook group called The Rise of the Exceptional Man. And in that, it's going to be exactly that, starting to bring in those conversations, going live, having those conversations around where are the best ways, where is everyone getting held up? It could be that you have your whole life figured out, but right now you're not having the best relationship with your spouse. Or maybe COVID has opened up a blind zone to you saying, I didn't have as much savings as what I wanted. How do I get a little bit more financially secure so that I can make sure that if we have another relapse of something, that I don't have to, lay awake, worry that I'm going to lose my job and have to go find something else. So there's, being able to customize a little bit better on helping everyone to rise up to that top level, that top shelf for them.
Fantastic. And Eric is a member of our EQ Advantage men's community and actually currently enrolled in a group coaching program with me. And I think Eric, I'll speak for you. I do that so well, speaking for other people. Seeing just how important emotional intelligence is to live life in a wholehearted way. How do you see emotional intelligence relating to this concept of being exceptional?
Yeah, I think there's so much emphasis on IQ, how smart somebody is. But we rarely, and we're starting as a society, we're starting to get more in tune with what emotional intelligence is. But the more that we dig into that, that's the superpower. That's the thing, because you can think all day. You can have the thoughts of, I want, this, I want this, I want this, I want this. But it's the emotions piece of it that's really driving you. Your emotions is your engine. And if your engine is off balance, if your engine is whatever, is shot or needs some TLC, you'll never go and get whatever it is that you wanted to go after.
Yeah.
And it could be just staring you right in the face. But again, that third observer of, you can look at yourself and go, I'm perfect. But it's, you know, or like, I'm not like my parents. But then when somebody else comes in and goes, you're just like your dad. And you're like, you shut your mouth. I'm not like my dad. And then once that seed is planted, you're like, oh my God, I'm my father.
I am my dad.
I am my dad. But there's a lot of that, right? And again, some of that emotional intelligence through working with, you know, just on being, you know, awareness is the first step. So once you can get awareness, then you can say, what is it that I want to include? What do I maybe not, you know, push away? And how do I customize my EQ so that I'm not just really working on my IQ, but I'm raising the other side of the EQ.
Yeah, and I'm of the mind that in most instances, the things in life that we want that we don't have, or the things that we want that we do have, is a result of some combination of emotional intelligence qualities, or lack thereof. So the group that we have is really about people accomplishing big goals in a short period of time, but looking at their emotional intelligence profile and figuring what they want to tweak in order to be successful in that. You know, is it like dialing up your assertiveness and your self-confidence, your empathy? Is it, you know, is it lowering your your lack of impulse control, whatever it is. So anyway, I'd love to talk to folks about that offline if they're interested. Back to your programs though. The name of your company and your podcast is Man of Class, and I was wondering how that relates to being exceptional, if that's something different. Tell us about that.
So I started out with creating Man of Class because there was just this idea of, okay, what does it define? Again, what are some of the qualities, not necessarily what defines, but what are some of the qualities that have served me well in my life that I could kind of help other people with, right? It's the same thing with the EQ advantage, where your assertiveness, unless you're aware of what assertiveness really means, and then some type of an understanding of how well you really are, or maybe their lack of, then you can start to move the needle towards what that really meant. But until that point, you may say, well, I've got the best EQ in the world, but you may not be aware of it. And so some of that boils down into the name of Man of Class. Class is actually an acronym. And so CLASS stands for continuous learning, the adaptability, supportive of others, and striving for success. And so really when I looked at it through that lens, you know, things that have worked well for me, continuous learning, CL, I read so much. You can see the books behind me, but I read so much and try to absorb so much knowledge of what are the trends, what are the things that I can learn from 50-year-olds, from 60-year-olds, from 80-year-olds, you know, from 20-year-olds. It doesn't have to be forward, but even backwards. What are the things that the younger generations are learning that we need to adapt as well? And that gets into the adaptability piece. It's one thing to learn and say, now I know everything. It's the other piece of how can I be adaptable? How can I step into and embody that? So now I can change if we get hit with a global pandemic, or all of a sudden, you know, whatever happens, we start to become, Elon gets us off Earth and we're walking around like on
locusts, Mars, or, you know, the smiting of the firstborn, you know, for you know.
That's right. Whatever may happen.
Whatever.
Whatever a random Tuesday chooses to throw at us.
Yeah.
And then supportive of others, you know, when I think of the best thing that I've been able to, you hear this all at the time, you are the 5 people that you surround yourself by. That's great. But then how can you elevate those 5 people to higher levels, or challenge their thinkings, or help? And, you know, the rising tide raises all the ships.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. How can you be supportive of others? And by the way, it's kind of self-feeding, because every time that you do for others, you feel good as a person, but then karma will tell you that sooner or later, someone's going to come and give you that helping hand. Right. And then striving for success is just something that if you don't have goals, then you're not going to go anywhere. That person that says, well, what do I care about my legacy if I'm dead?
Yeah.
well, then you could just sit there for the rest of your life and not do anything, because that could be that logic.
Right.
But really having goals, and it's really that combination of everything that in my mind looked at it and said, how is it that I can get the exceptional life? It's to become a man of class. And it's sort of like stacking in this ecosphere of like, this is how, it's not only the what, but it's also the how in order to get that life of what you really want to get.
We were talking the other night about some of the folks that you've helped, and you gave me you painted a nice picture of, you know, who that guy is. So, you know, maybe you can share a story or two about, you know, who that person is when they come to you, what, you know, what's their life like, and what's the experience at the other side of the rainbow.
It's really interesting. I just did a podcast episode with a buddy named Chad, and he actually did a beautiful job. So I urge everyone to go listen to that episode. But he talked about where he was, like his catalyst of what really got him. And it was soon after that when we started working together. But he was really close with his grandfather. He was living life and everything was fine, right? Everything, you know, he was just going through life. He felt this urge and desire to go do something more. He had more inside of him to give, but he just didn't know what it was. And when his grandfather passed away, and he was so stuck into his corporate job that he couldn't get away to be there. He only visited him twice, when he started treatment and then when he passed, like right before he passed. But like in his heart, he really wanted, because he was so close, he really wanted to be there more, but he just couldn't do it. And so it wasn't until when he passed away that he said, I'm not living my life. I'm living the life that somebody else wanted for me. I'm living the life of the corporate world, or I'm living the life that, you know, my parents had told me that I should do, or society has told me I should do. And I'm not really living my life. And so after we started working together, and it was okay, he fell into real estate and realizing that he could create wealth for himself as well as others and provide sustainable housing for people. And it really lit him up inside. And it was okay. There was a massive amounts of, again, troubles hit him every step of the way, but we worked together. And now on the outside of it, he left his W-2. He just closed on deal number 3 or number 4. And he has built out his day exactly how he wants to build it out. He wakes up when he wants to, he works out. He's got a young daughter as well. So he's there for his wife and his daughter. And they're able to go on vacations more. They're able to spend more time with family. They're able to go travel. They're doing all of these things that seem like a pipe dream for them. So that's one example. Yeah, another example is just, you know, guys where, you know, how many times can you say you wake up and you hit the snooze button because you're frustrated with, you know, you don't really want to start the day. It's so comfy to just be in bed, but you don't really want to get out of bed. So you stay there, you hit the snooze button, then you get up, then you're late, then you have to run around, you do all these things. And when people ask you, hey, what's going on? You're like, oh, it's fine. Hey, life's great. You know, living the dream, right? We throw out that thing.
With the air quotes. You got to put the air
with
quotes.
The air quotes, because people say it, they don't do the air quotes, but you can tell when somebody says, I'm living the dream versus living the dream.
Living the dream. Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm fine. Everything's okay. Right. It could be great. It's not. It's okay. And then when they see people that are living, all of a sudden 2 things either happens. Either I really wish I had that, or they must have gotten an easy break, because there's no way that, you know, then it's like almost like hatred. But that hatred is really because you see that that's potential for them. And for some reason you're saying that's not possible for me, which is a limiting belief.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, so a lot of times it's those are the clients that I end up talking with and going, yeah, I see that, but that's not possible, or I don't really know what to go do. Or maybe it's just, I feel like I just have more in me to give, but I just don't know what to go do. Is it to start a business? Is it to start a charity? Is it to travel more? Is it to be a volunteer with kids? You know, there's something inside of me. You know, there's the brain that says everything's fine. And then there's the heart that says there's something else in you to give. That heart is that potential that's going to walk through that door at the end of your life. It's not the brain, because the brain can rationalize everything.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, I feel so much at peace. You know, there's the feeling that his one client actually had pain, because he noticed that he used to just get so tense and angry at certain things that he actually had pain to the point where the doctors are like, I don't know why you have pain. Wow. Right? Take ibuprofen, I guess. But after working together, I'm not saying by any stretch of imagination that I'm a healing doctor, but
Yeah.
we worked through a lot of the stuff that would cause him to tense up and get so angry that, I asked him every single time that we met him, like, how is your pain? At the beginning, it was really high. At the very end, he's like, I have like little to no pain. He's like, and so I just feel happier. I look through lenses differently, and nothing changed. It's not like he ate something miraculously. It was just all that stress and anxiety and overwhelm that was slowly just, ratcheting up all of his muscles until something happened.
Yeah.
Blood
Yeah.
pressure goes up,
We
heart
feel it in
attack.
our bodies. We wear it in our bodies. And it's great that he gets to work with somebody like you who can help him release a
Mhm.
lot of that while also moving toward that ideal vision of what he wants. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. So it looks like we're about at time. Is there anything that you're burning to share that I forgot to ask you that
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of ground. So
tell people how they can get in touch with you, and we'll
sure,
also put it in the comments later on. But,
of course. So the easiest thing is on social media at Eric Yusko, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. And then the second thing is there is a Man of Class page, and be on the lookout. I'll share it there for the Rise of the Exceptional Man as I start to get that group up off the ground and really going somewhere. And then the
and
website.
you've got a PDF download to make available for folks, if I recall.
I do. So if any of this has hit a twinge or a nerve where you're like, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's full of it, maybe he's not full of it, I'd encourage everybody to at least go to manofclass.com/coaching secrets. And I put together an ebook, and that ebook, it walks through really what it takes. How do you leave ordinary and go after exceptional? And it boils down concepts into, three main pillars that I talk about, as well as, so from like a holistic strategy, but as well gives some of the tactics of like, how do I go through some of the stuff? And I say coaching secrets because these are things that I've helped real clients with. It's not some theoretical philosophy PhD type thing. These are real world examples and real fundamentals that have been used that have really made a difference in men's lives. So I encourage everybody to go to manofclass.com/coaching secrets to get your free download today.
Fantastic. And women who are listening, you can download it too,
Of
and you can
course,
give it to the men in your life or share it with the men in your life.
that's true. Is like, slide it across,
Yes,
that table,
subtly.
just like
Don't.
subtly go over and say, hey, hon, look at this. Yeah,
You might.
absolutely.
Eric, thank you so much. This was awesome. You've given
Thank you for
people such
having me.
great perspective, and folks, definitely check out Eric's website. Reach out to him. Join his Facebook community. Awesome. I want to invite all the fellows who are on the call today to come check out our EQ Advantage Facebook group as well. We do lots of trainings there and share content and information all the time. Plus, you get to meet great guys like Eric Yusko. And next week, we're going to have Andres Valencia on as a guest at midweek. We'll post some information about that soon. And have a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks,
Signing
guys.
off.